The night Evan Cole's 6-year relationship ended, he didn't cry. He just sat there in his empty Denver apartment, staring at the engagement ring he'd been too afraid to offer, wondering how loving someone completely could leave him feeling so invisible. But 48 hours later, when his doorbell rang and he opened the door to find Mia's mother standing on his porch with eyes that held something between pity and hunger, Evan realized his heartbreak was about to get a whole lot more complicated. If you want to see how a construction manager's quiet devastation turned into the most controversial love story Denver's ever whispered about, stick around until the end of this story. And hey, hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. The rain came down in sheets that Friday night, turning Denver's streets into rivers of neon and headlight glare. Evan Cole sat in his truck outside Mia Hart's apartment building, engine running, wipers beating a rhythm that matched his pulse. 6 years. 2,190 days of building a life with someone, and it all came down to a text message. "Can you come over? We need to talk." Everyone knew what those 5 words meant. Evan had known since the moment his phone lit up on the construction site that afternoon. His crew had seen his face change, seen the color drain from his skin like water from a broken pipe. His foreman, Danny Rodriguez, had clapped him on the shoulder and told him to take off early. "Go handle your business, Cole. We'll lock up." Now, sitting in the visitor parking spot he'd occupied 1,000 times before, Evan wondered if he should just drive away, preserve whatever dignity he had left. But that wasn't who he was. Evan Cole finished what he started. He showed up. He did the work. Even when the work was watching everything fall apart. He killed the engine and stepped out into the rain. The cold shocked his system, soaking through his work jacket before he'd taken 3 steps. By the time he reached Mia's door on the 2nd floor, his boots were squelching and his hair was plastered to his forehead. He raised his hand to knock, but the door swung open before his knuckles made contact. Mia stood in the doorway, backlit by the warm glow of her apartment. She looked beautiful. She always looked beautiful. Tonight she wore the oversized sweater Evan had bought her last Christmas, the soft gray one she claimed made her feel like she was being hugged. Her dark hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and her eyes, those green eyes that had first caught his attention at a house party in 2019, wouldn't quite meet his. "You're soaked," she said quietly. "It's raining. I know. I'm sorry. Come in." Evan stepped inside, and the familiar smell of her apartment hit him like a memory made solid. Vanilla candles, the lavender fabric softener she used religiously. Coffee, always coffee, because Mia lived on caffeine and ambition. This place had been his second home for 6 years. Some months, especially when work was heavy, he'd spent more nights on her couch than in his own bed. "Let me get you a towel," Mia said, already moving toward the bathroom. "Don't." Evan's voice came out rougher than he intended. "Just say it, Mia. Whatever you brought me here to say, just say it." She stopped mid-step, her back to him. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The rain hammered against the windows. Somewhere in the building, a door slammed. A dog barked. Normal sounds from a normal Friday night, except nothing about this moment felt normal. When Mia finally turned around, her eyes were wet. "I can't do this anymore, Evan." 5 words. Different from the text, but the meaning was the same. Evan felt something crack in his chest, something that had been holding firm for 27 years suddenly giving way like a beam under too much weight. Can't do what? He needed her to say it, all of it. Us, this. I can't keep pretending that this is what I want. Pretending. Evan repeated the word like it was in a foreign language. 6 years, and you were pretending? That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean, Mia? Because I'm standing here soaking wet in the apartment I helped you move into, looking at the furniture I helped you assemble, and you're telling me you've been pretending, so explain it to me. Make it make sense. Mia wrapped her arms around herself, and Evan recognized the gesture. It was her armor, the thing she did when she needed to protect herself from the world. He'd seen it when her father left, when she didn't get into her first-choice grad school, when her best friend stopped speaking to her over some petty drama Evan never fully understood. The difference was, those times Evan had been the one to hold her, to break through that armor and remind her she wasn't alone. Now he was the threat she was protecting herself from. I love you, Mia said, and somehow those 3 words hurt worse than the rejection. I do, Evan. You're kind and steady, and you've been so good to me. You've supported every dream I've ever had. You bought me my first professional camera. You stayed up all night helping me edit my portfolio for that freelance gig. You've never asked me for anything I wasn't ready to give. But I'm 26 years old, and I feel like I'm already settled, like my life is already decided. And I look at you and I see forever, and instead of feeling happy about that, I feel... She trailed off, searching for the word. Trapped, Evan finished for her. Terrified, Mia corrected. I'm terrified that if I say yes to forever with you, I'll spend the rest of my life wondering what else was out there. Who else I could have been if I wasn't someone's girlfriend, someone's future wife. The engagement ring in Evan's jacket pocket felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. I've been saving for a ring, he heard himself say. Had it for 3 months now. Was waiting for the right moment. Mia's face crumpled. Evan, don't... You want to know the really pathetic part? I knew. Some part of me knew you weren't ready. That's why I kept waiting, kept finding excuses. The timing wasn't right. You were stressed about work, the holidays were coming up. Always something. He laughed, a hollow sound that barely qualified as humor. I was so busy making sure I didn't pressure you that I didn't notice I was building a life with someone who didn't want to be in it. That's not fair. I do want you in my life. Just not like this. Not yet. Maybe not ever in the way you need. And there it was. The truth, clean and sharp as a blade. Evan nodded slowly. His clothes were still dripping on her hardwood floor, forming a puddle that spread like a stain. Okay. Okay? You want freedom. I get it. I'm not going to beg you to choose me, Mia. I've got more self-respect than that. He hoped it was true. Right now, standing in her apartment with his heart in pieces, he wasn't sure about anything. I just have one question. Mia waited, her arms still wrapped tight around herself. Did you ever really see a future with me? Or was I just convenient? The good guy who was there when you needed support, who asked for nothing, who made it easy to focus on your career because I handled everything else? Don't do that. Don't make yourself small to make me the villain. I'm not making myself anything, Mia. I'm asking a question, because I need to know if the last 6 years meant something, or if I was just a placeholder until you figured out what you really wanted. The silence that followed was answer enough. Evan turned toward the door. Evan, wait. I hope you find it, he said without looking back. Whatever you're searching for. I really do. He walked out into the rain and didn't hear if she called after him again. The storm swallowed everything, sound, sense, the illusion that love was ever enough on its own. What? The weekend passed in a blur of silence and stillness. Evan's apartment had never felt so empty. It was a modest 1-bedroom in a converted warehouse in the Rhino district, all exposed brick and high ceilings that made the space feel bigger than it was. He'd moved in right after landing the construction manager position at Bridgepoint Development 3 years ago. Mia had helped him pick out the furniture, insisting on the navy couch that now seemed to mock him with its memories. Saturday, he called in sick to the weekend job he'd picked up for extra cash. He couldn't face people, couldn't pretend to be functional. Instead, he lay on that navy couch and stared at the ceiling, trying to pinpoint the exact moment things had started to fall apart. Had it been last month, when he'd suggested looking at houses together, and Mia had changed the subject? Or 3 months before that, when he'd brought up meeting with a financial planner to start saving for a wedding, and she'd laughed it off as premature? Maybe it was a year ago, when he'd started talking about wanting kids someday, and she'd gone very quiet, then very distant for a week. Or maybe it had been doomed from the start, and Evan had been too in love to see it. His phone buzzed periodically. Texts from his brother, Ryan, who'd apparently heard the news through the Denver grapevine, which was really just Ryan's girlfriend being friends with Mia's cousin. Evan ignored them. He ignored calls from Danny, from his mom, from a number he didn't recognize that called 3 times before giving up. Sunday was worse. The silence became physical, a presence that filled the apartment like water rising. Evan tried to eat, but nothing tasted right. Tried to watch TV, but couldn't focus. He ended up in the shower for an hour, letting scalding water beat against his shoulders until the hot water ran out and he was left shivering under a stream that had gone ice cold. When he finally emerged, wrapped in a towel and dripping on the bathroom tile, his phone was ringing again. Unknown number. Something made him answer. "Mr. Cole?" The voice was professional, female, vaguely familiar. "Yeah? This is Serena Hart, Mia's mother. I'm sorry to call on a Sunday, but I was hoping we could talk." Evan's brain short-circuited. Of all the people he'd expected to hear from, Mia's mother hadn't even made the list. "Mrs. Hart, I don't think—" "Please, just 10 minutes. I'm actually outside your building. I brought coffee." "Your what?" "I know it's intrusive. I know you probably want space, but I've been sitting in my car for 20 minutes trying to work up the courage to call you, and I think if I drive away now, I'll regret it." She paused. "I'd like to see you, Evan, just for a few minutes. If you're not comfortable inviting me up, we can talk in my car." Every instinct told Evan to say no, to protect what was left of his dignity and his peace. But there was something in Serena Hart's voice, a kind of desperate honesty that cut through his defenses. "Give me 5 minutes," he said. He dressed in a daze, pulling on jeans and a faded Broncos t-shirt, ran a hand through his wet hair, caught sight of himself in the mirror, and saw a man who looked 10 years older than he had on Friday. There were shadows under his eyes, new lines around his mouth. The face of someone who'd been sucker-punched by life and was still trying to find his footing. When he made it downstairs and stepped out into the late afternoon sun, he spotted Serena Hart immediately. She was standing beside a silver BMW, dressed in dark jeans and a cream-colored sweater, holding 2 cups of coffee like an offering. Evan had met Serena maybe a dozen times over the years. Holiday dinners, Mia's college graduation, a birthday party or two. She was one of those women who seemed ageless, probably in her mid-40s, but with the kind of poise and polish that made age irrelevant. Dark hair cut in a sleek bob, sharp cheekbones, the same green eyes Mia had inherited, though Serena's held a depth that came from experience, from years Mia hadn't lived yet. She was, objectively speaking, beautiful. Evan had noticed it the way you notice art in a museum, appreciative but distant because she was Mia's mother and therefore existed in a category marked off-limits in every possible way. "Thank you for coming down," Serena said, offering him one of the coffees. "Black, 2 sugars, I remember from Thanksgiving." Evan took the cup, surprised she'd remembered. "Mrs. Hart—" "Serena, please, I think we're past formalities." She gestured toward a bench near the building's entrance. "Can we sit?" They sat. Evan sipped the coffee, which was exactly right, and waited for Serena to explain why she was here, ambushing his Sunday with coffee and concern. "I heard what happened," she said finally. "Mia called me Friday night. She was crying." "I didn't make her cry," Evan said immediately, defensively. "I know. She was crying because she knew she'd hurt you, and because she knows she made the wrong choice, even if she's not ready to admit it yet." Serena stared down at her coffee cup, turning it slowly in her hands. "I'm not here to convince you to take her back. That's not my place, and frankly, I don't think you should." Evan blinked. "Then why are you here?" Serena looked at him, really looked at him, and Evan felt something shift in the air between them. Something he couldn't name but could feel, like pressure before a storm. "Because for 6 years, I've watched you love my daughter, and for 6 years, I've watched her take that love for granted." She said it quietly, but with a fierceness that made Evan sit up straighter. "You showed up, Evan, to every event, every crisis, every dream she chased. You supported her photography when she was convinced she'd never make it. You helped her move 3 times. You sat through her experimental film phase and told her every weird short was brilliant. That's what you do when you love someone. That's what you do when you're committed to someone," Serena corrected. "And my daughter was never committed to you the way you were to her. I saw it. I tried to talk to her about it, tried to get her to be honest with you and with herself. But Mia is young and selfish and convinced the world owes her time to figure herself out." Evan didn't know what to say. The criticism of Mia felt wrong coming from her own mother, but it also felt true in a way that made his chest ache. "You didn't drive across town to tell me your daughter doesn't deserve me," he said carefully. "No." Serena set her coffee down on the bench between them. "I came to tell you that I'm sorry. for not saying something sooner, for watching you invest in a relationship that I knew wasn't balanced, for sitting across from you at dinner parties and seeing how you looked at her and knowing she didn't look at you the same way. Mrs. Hart, Serena, you don't have to apologize for your daughter's choices. Maybe not, but I'm apologizing anyway. She stood, smoothing her hands down her jeans. I should go. I just needed you to know that what happened wasn't your fault. You were everything you should have been. Mia just wasn't ready to receive it. She turned to leave, and Evan felt panic flutter in his chest. Not because he wanted her to stay exactly, but because the idea of going back upstairs to his silent apartment felt unbearable. Serena. She paused, looking back over her shoulder. Thank you. For the coffee, and for saying all that. She smiled, and it was a sad, knowing smile that made her look younger and more vulnerable than Evan had ever seen her. Take care of yourself, Evan Cole. You deserve someone who chooses you every single day, without hesitation. Then she got in her silver BMW and drove away, leaving Evan standing on the sidewalk with lukewarm coffee and the strangest feeling that something important had just happened. He just didn't know what. Monday morning came too soon and not soon enough. Evan woke at 5 a.m. from a restless sleep full of dreams he couldn't quite remember, fragments of conversations and faces that slipped away the moment he opened his eyes. He lay in bed for 20 minutes, considering calling in sick again, before forcing himself vertical. Work. He needed work. Needed the structure and the noise and the physical exhaustion that came from 10 hours on a construction site. The Bridgepoint development project was a mixed-use complex in Ilodo, 3 buildings that would house retail space, luxury apartments, and a boutique hotel. Evan's crew was in charge of the apartment building, and they were 3 weeks behind schedule thanks to supply chain issues and a subcontractor who'd turned out to be spectacularly unreliable. Normally, Evan thrived on the challenge. He was good at his job, good at managing people, and solving problems and seeing 3 steps ahead. But today, standing on the 5th floor of an unfinished building, looking at rebar and concrete and the skeletal promise of what this place would become, he felt nothing but tired. Boss, you look like hell. Evan turned to find Danny Rodriguez approaching with 2 hard hats and a concerned expression. Danny was 45, built like a tank with a gray-streaked beard and eyes that missed nothing. Thanks for the honesty, Evan muttered, taking one of the hard hats. She really did it, huh? Called it off? Can we not talk about this on site? Sure. We can talk about it over lunch instead. Danny clapped him on the shoulder hard enough to make Evan wince. Come on, Cole. We got a building to finish. Best way to stop thinking is to start working. Danny was right. For the next 4 hours, Evan lost himself in the rhythm of construction, delegating tasks, troubleshooting electrical issues, coordinating with the plumbing crew about bathroom layouts. By noon, his body hurt in all the right ways, and his mind had quieted enough that he could almost pretend he was fine. Almost. Lunch was takeout burritos eaten on the 3rd floor scaffolding. Danny waited until Evan was 3 bites in before launching his interrogation. So what's the plan? You gonna try to win her back? Grand gesture? Flowers? Skywriting? No. No? Just like that? Evan chewed slowly, buying time. She doesn't want me, Danny. She was pretty clear about that. I'm not going to humiliate myself chasing someone who's already running away. That's remarkably mature for a guy whose girlfriend just dumped him. Ex-girlfriend. Right, ex. Danny unwrapped his burrito with the focus of a man performing surgery. For what it's worth, I always thought you could do better. You met Mia once. Yeah, at the company Christmas party. She spent the whole night on her phone and left early because she had a shoot the next morning. Danny made air quotes around the word shoot. Meanwhile, you stayed and helped clean up because that's who you are. You're the guy who stays. Evan stared out at the Denver skyline, all glass and steel and ambition reaching toward a cloudless sky. Maybe that's the problem, he said quietly. Maybe I stayed too long. The week crawled by. Work, home, sleep, repeat. Evan avoided his phone except for work calls. Avoided social media, where he knew Mia's life would continue in carefully curated squares. Avoided friends who wanted to check on him with that particular brand of pity that made him want to break things. Wednesday night, his brother Ryan showed up unannounced with beer and pizza. I'm not in the mood, Evan said, but Ryan pushed past him into the apartment anyway. Good thing I didn't ask. Ryan was 2 years younger, a software engineer with too much energy and too many opinions. He set the pizza on the counter and popped the caps off 2 beers. You look terrible, by the way. So I've been told. When's the last time you ate something that wasn't delivered in a greasy bag? Evan couldn't remember. Ryan shoved a beer into his hand. Drink, eat, talk, in that order. They settled on the couch, that damn Navy couch, and ate in silence for a while. The pizza was from Marco's, the place near Evan's old apartment that made their pepperoni exactly crispy enough. Ryan had remembered. Despite his annoying habits, Ryan had always been good at the small things that mattered. Chelsea says Mia's been posting cryptic quotes on Instagram, Ryan said finally. A lot of stuff about finding yourself and choosing freedom. Good for her. You're really not going to fight for this? Evan set his beer down carefully. What would I be fighting for, Ryan? The chance to convince someone to love me? The opportunity to prove I'm worth choosing? I spent 6 years doing that. I'm done. That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? Because from where I'm sitting, everyone seems to think I should either be devastated or plotting some big romantic comeback. But the truth is, I'm just tired. I'm tired of being the one who cared more, who tried harder, who rearranged my whole life to fit into hers while she kept one foot out the door the entire time. Ryan studied him for a long moment. You're right. I'm sorry. I just hate seeing you like this. Like what? Alone. Evan laughed, but there was no humor in it. I've been alone for a while, man. I just didn't realize it until now. They finished the pizza, watched half a Nuggets game. When Ryan finally left around 10, he hugged Evan at the door, a real hug, the kind they hadn't shared since their dad died 5 years ago. You're going to be okay, Ryan said. Evan nodded because it was easier than admitting he wasn't sure that was true. Thursday afternoon, Evan was in the site trailer reviewing blueprints when his phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, remembering the last time an unknown number had called, but something made him pick up. Mr. Cole, this is Serena Hart again. I'm sorry to bother you at work. Evan's pulse kicked up for reasons he didn't want to examine. Mrs. Serena, hi. Is everything okay? Yes, no, I don't know. She sounded flustered, which was so unlike the composed woman he'd met on Sunday that Evan immediately sat up straighter. I've been debating whether to call you all week. This is probably completely inappropriate, but I was wondering if you'd like to have dinner with me. Evan's brain stalled out. Dinner. I know how that sounds. I know what you must be thinking, but I've been where you are, Evan. After my divorce, I spent 6 months feeling like I'd wasted 15 years of my life on someone who never really saw me. And the only thing that helped was talking to someone who understood. Someone outside my usual circle who could listen without judgment. You want to have dinner so I can talk about my breakup with your daughter. I want to have dinner because I think we could both use the company of someone who gets it. But if that's too weird, I completely understand. Okay? Silence. Okay? Evan surprised himself by meaning it. Yeah, okay, when? Are you free Friday night? There's a restaurant in Cherry Creek, quiet, good food. We could meet there at 7? 7 works. Thank you, Evan. I know this is strange. I promise I'm not as unhinged as I sound right now. He found himself smiling, a real smile, the first in a week. I'll see you Friday, Serena. After they hung up, Evan sat in the site trailer for a long time, staring at his phone and wondering what the hell he'd just agreed to. Dinner with his ex-girlfriend's mother. It was bizarre, potentially catastrophic, definitely the kind of choice that would raise eyebrows if anyone found out. But for the first time since Friday night, standing in Mia's apartment with his heart breaking open, Evan felt something other than numbness. He felt curious. The restaurant Serena had chosen was called Provisions, tucked into a quiet corner of Cherry Creek that managed to feel intimate despite the neighborhood's usual polish and pretension. Evan arrived 10 minutes early, a habit drilled into him by years of construction schedules where being late meant costing someone money. He sat in his truck in the parking lot, second-guessing everything about this situation. What was he doing here? Having dinner with Mia's mother less than a week after Mia had ended things? It felt wrong on multiple levels, like crossing invisible lines he didn't even know existed until he was stepping over them. But then he remembered Serena's voice on the phone, that unexpected vulnerability when she'd talked about her divorce, about understanding what it felt like to waste years on someone who didn't see you. And he remembered standing on the sidewalk Sunday afternoon, watching her drive away, feeling less alone than he had in days. At 6:58, Evan got out of the truck. The restaurant's interior was all warm wood and soft lighting, the kind of place that whispered rather than shouted its elegance. A hostess who looked barely 20 greeted him with a professional smile that faltered slightly when he gave Serena's name. Maybe she recognized it. Maybe she just found something odd about a construction worker in dark jeans and a button-down showing up alone on a Friday night. Serena was already seated at a corner table, and when she saw Evan approaching, she stood. She wore a simple black dress and a gray wrap, her dark hair loose around her shoulders instead of in its usual severe bob. She looked nervous, Evan realized. Her hands fidgeted with the stem of her water glass, and there was color high on her cheekbones that might have been makeup, but looked more like anxiety. "You came," she said, and there was genuine relief in her voice. "I said I would. I know, but after I hung up, I convinced myself you'd think better of it." She gestured to the chair across from her. "Please sit. I already ordered wine. I hope that's okay. I needed something to do with my hands while I waited." Evan sat, and a server appeared almost immediately with a bottle of red and 2 glasses. He poured for both of them with the kind of theatrical precision that made Evan feel like he was watching a performance. When the server retreated, Serena raised her glass. "To unexpected company," she said. Evan touched his glass to hers, and the crystal sang a clear, bright note. "To unexpected company." The wine was good, though Evan couldn't have said why. He knew beer and occasionally bourbon, but wine was Mia's territory. She'd spent hours talking about tannins and oak and terroir, words that had floated past Evan like a language he'd never quite learned. "Thank you for meeting me," Serena said. "I know this must seem strange." "Strange is one word for it." "What's another?" Evan considered. "Complicated." Serena smiled, a genuine expression that softened her features and made her look younger. "Yes, complicated fits." She took a sip of wine, gathering herself. "I want to be clear about why I asked you here, Evan. This isn't about Mia. I'm not trying to play matchmaker or convince you to give her another chance. This is about me being selfish." "Selfish how?" "I've spent the last week thinking about our conversation on Sunday, about what I said to you, about watching you love my daughter for 6 years, and I realized that I envied you." Evan blinked. "You envied me?" "You loved someone completely, openly. You didn't hedge your bets or keep one foot out the door. You just gave yourself to the relationship and trusted it would be enough." Serena's fingers traced the rim of her wine glass. "I've never done that. Not with Mia's father, not with anyone since. I've always been too careful, too protective of myself. And sitting in my car Sunday, watching you walk away, I thought, that's what I've been missing, that kind of courage." The server returned to take their order. Evan chose something at random from the menu, barely processing the words. Serena ordered a salad and salmon, her voice steady and composed in a way that made Evan wonder if the vulnerability she'd just shown was something she regretted. When they were alone again, Evan leaned forward. "You said you've been where I am, after your divorce." "I did. I was." Serena set her wine glass down with care. "Mia's father and I were married for 15 years. We got together young. I was 22, he was 25. Everyone said we were perfect together. Same background, same ambitions, same social circle. On paper, it made sense. But perfect on paper doesn't mean anything when there's no real connection underneath. David was a good man, a good provider. He never cheated, never raised his voice, never gave me a concrete reason to be unhappy. But he also never really saw me. I was his wife, the mother of his child, the woman who looked right standing next to him at charity galas. But I don't think he ever knew who I actually was." She paused, something flickering across her face. "And I don't think I let him. I was so busy being what everyone expected that I forgot to be a person." Evan understood that more than he wanted to admit. "When did it end?" 3 years ago. Mia was 23, establishing her photography business. David sat me down one night and said he thought we should separate. He was calm about it, logical. He laid out all the reasons it made sense. We'd grown apart. We had different goals. Mia was grown and didn't need us to stay together for her sake. It was the most honest conversation we'd had in years, which should have told me everything I needed to know. Serena's smile was bitter. I agreed. We divided assets, filed papers, stayed civil. Our friends barely noticed because we'd been living separate lives for so long anyway. I'm sorry. Don't be. It was the right choice. But the aftermath was brutal. I spent months questioning everything. Had I wasted my 20s and 30s on a marriage that was always going to fail? Had I modeled something broken for my daughter? Was I even capable of real intimacy? Or had I calcified into someone too guarded to let anyone in? Their food arrived, interrupting the confession. Evan looked down at his plate, some kind of steak with roasted vegetables, and realized he was hungry for the first time in a week. They ate in companionable silence for a few minutes, the background noise of the restaurant creating a cocoon of privacy around their corner table. Can I ask you something? Serena said finally. Sure. When did you know? With Mia. When did you know it wasn't working? Evan cut into his steak, watching the juice run across the plate. I think I always knew on some level, but I kept telling myself I was being paranoid, that I was projecting my own insecurities. My dad left when I was 12, just walked out one day and never came back. And I spent years wondering what I'd done wrong, what I could have done differently to make him stay. Evan, that wasn't your fault. I know that now. Logically, I know it. But that scared kid is still in here somewhere, convinced that if I just try hard enough, love someone well enough, they won't leave. He met Serena's eyes. So when I felt Mia pulling away, I just tried harder, supported her more, asked for less, made myself smaller so she'd have more room to grow. That's not love. That's self-erasure. Yeah, I'm starting to figure that out. They talked through dinner, the conversation flowing with an ease that surprised Evan. Serena asked about his work, and he found himself telling her about the Lodu project, about the satisfaction of seeing something rise from nothing, of taking blueprints and ideas and making them solid. She told him about her work in interior design, how she'd started the business after her divorce as a way to reclaim her own sense of taste and purpose. Mia thinks I'm shallow, Serena said with a laugh. She makes art. I make spaces look pretty. In her mind, there's a hierarchy. Mia's 26. She thinks a lot of things. You're not angry at her, are you? Even after everything? Evan considered the question. No, I'm sad. I'm disappointed. But I'm not angry. She didn't do anything wrong, really. She was honest about what she wanted eventually. I'm the one who spent 6 years ignoring the signs. Stop that. Evan looked up, startled by the sharpness in Serena's tone. Stop making excuses for her. Stop taking responsibility for her choices. Serena's green eyes blazed with something fierce. Mia strung you along for 6 years. She took your support, your time, your money, and she gave you just enough affection to keep you invested while she figured out what she really wanted. That's not you ignoring signs. That's her being selfish. She's your daughter, which is why I know exactly how selfish she can be. I love Mia. I'm proud of her. But I'm not blind to her flaws, and I won't sit here and watch you blame yourself for her inability to commit. Serena's hands were flat on the table, her knuckles white. You deserved better, Evan. You deserve someone who wanted you as much as you wanted them. The intensity of her words hung between them like something physical. Evan's heart was beating too fast, and he couldn't tell if it was the wine or the way Serena was looking at him, like he mattered, like his pain was valid, like he was worth defending. Thank you, he said quietly. Serena's expression softened. She reached across the table and squeezed his hand just once before pulling away. Sorry, I didn't mean to get so worked up. It's just, I've watched this happen to too many good people. My friends, my clients. Hell, it happened to me. And I'm tired of watching people who give everything get treated like they're asking for too much. The server cleared their plates and offered dessert menus. Serena ordered coffee. Evan asked for the same, not ready for the evening to end, not ready to go back to his empty apartment and the silence that waited there. Can I tell you something? Serena said when the coffee came, dark and bitter, in white ceramic cups. Something I haven't told anyone? Of course. When David asked for the divorce, my first emotion wasn't sadness. It was relief. She wrapped both hands around her cup like she was trying to absorb its warmth. And that relief was followed immediately by shame, because what kind of person is relieved that their 15-year marriage is ending? But I was. I was so tired of performing, of being the right kind of wife, of basing every decision on what people would think. You got your life back. I did. And then I spent 3 years being terrified of doing anything with it. I threw myself into work, into being a mother to a grown daughter who didn't need me anymore, into staying busy enough that I didn't have to think about what I actually wanted. She looked up, and her eyes were bright. And then last Sunday, I sat in my car outside your apartment, and I thought, here's someone who knows what it's like to lose something and have to rebuild. And I wanted to talk to you, not as Mia's mother, not as David's ex-wife, but as Serena. Just Serena. Just Serena, Evan repeated. I like her. The smile she gave him was radiant and a little shy, and Evan felt something shift in his chest. Not the sharp pain of heartbreak, but something else. Something that felt almost like possibility. They left the restaurant a little after 9, stepping out into a cool Denver night that smelled like rain and possibility. The parking lot was nearly empty, their cars parked 3 spaces apart under the glow of streetlights. I'm glad we did this, Serena said, stopping between their vehicles. I was worried it would be awkward or that you'd spend the whole time thinking about Mia. I didn't think about her once. It was true. For 3 hours, Evan had been completely present, focused on the woman in front of him instead of the ghost of his ex-girlfriend. Good. Serena pulled her wrap tighter against the chill. Would you want to do this again? Maybe next week? Every rational part of Evan's brain screamed that this was a bad idea, that spending time with Mia's mother was asking for trouble, for complications, for a whole new category of pain. But standing there in the parking lot with Serena looking at him hopefully, Evan couldn't bring himself to care about rational. Yeah, he said, I'd like that. Serena's smile could have lit the entire parking lot. Friday, same time? It's a date. The word hung between them for a beat too long, neither of them correcting it. Then Serena moved forward and hugged him, a quick embrace that smelled like wine and some expensive perfume Evan couldn't name. When she pulled back, her cheeks were flushed. Drive safe, Evan. You too. He watched her pull out of the parking lot, her taillights disappearing into Denver traffic, before getting into his own truck. The interior still smelled faintly of sawdust and coffee, familiar scents that grounded him back in his regular life. But as Evan drove home through streets that suddenly didn't feel quite so empty, he couldn't shake the feeling that something had fundamentally shifted. He'd gone to dinner expecting to talk about his breakup, to process his grief with someone who understood loss. Instead, he'd spent 3 hours laughing, sharing stories, connecting with another person in a way that felt electric and new and terrifying. And the person he'd connected with was Mia's mother. Evan was still processing that fact when he pulled into his parking spot and saw a familiar figure sitting on the steps outside his building. Mia. She stood when she saw him, and even in the dim light, Evan could see she'd been crying. Her eyes were red and swollen, her usual polish replaced by the kind of exhaustion that comes from days of not sleeping right. Hey, she said as Evan approached. Mia, what are you doing here? I needed to see you. I've been calling all week, but you didn't answer. I know. Can we talk? Please, just for a few minutes? Every instinct told Evan to say no, to protect himself, to maintain the boundaries he'd been carefully constructing all week. But Mia looked so small standing there, so lost, that he found himself nodding. Yeah, okay, come up. They climbed the stairs in silence, and Evan's apartment felt like neutral territory as he unlocked the door and let her in. Mia moved through the space like she was visiting a museum of her own past, trailing her fingers along the back of the navy couch, pausing to look at the framed photo on the bookshelf. Her and Evan at Red Rocks last summer, sunburned and happy. You look good, she said finally. Better than I expected. What did you expect? I don't know. A wreck, I guess. The way I've been. She turned to face him, and fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. "I made a mistake, Evan, letting you go. I see that now." Evan's heart clenched, but not in the way it would have a week ago. Not with longing or hope, but with a kind of sad resignation. "Mia, I know what I said. I know I told you I wanted freedom, but this week has been hell. I can't eat, can't sleep. Everything reminds me of you, and I keep thinking about all the things I took for granted. The way you always knew when I needed space and when I needed comfort. The way you believed in my work even when I didn't. The way you made me feel safe. Safe isn't the same as loved. I do love you. I never stopped loving you. But you don't want me. Not the way I want to be wanted." Evan leaned against the kitchen counter, putting physical distance between them. "You want safety and support and someone to catch you when you fall. But you don't want partnership. You don't want to build a life together. You want someone waiting in the wings while you live your life. That's not fair, isn't it? 6 years, Mia. 6 years of me asking for nothing but your time and attention, and you couldn't give me that. You couldn't commit to a future, couldn't talk about marriage without changing the subject, couldn't even spend a full weekend with me without checking your phone every 5 minutes for something more interesting." Mia flinched like he'd struck her. "I was scared. I was 20 when we got together. I didn't know who I was yet." "And now you do?" "No, but I know I don't want to figure it out without you." There was a time when those words would have been everything Evan needed to hear. A time when Mia's tears and apologies would have been enough to pull him back in, to convince him that love could survive anything if you just tried hard enough. But that time had passed. "I can't do this again," Evan said quietly. "I can't be the person you come back to because you're lonely or scared or having second thoughts. I can't build my life around someone who sees me as an option instead of a priority." "So that's it? We're just done?" "Yeah, Mia, we're done." She stood there for a long moment, tears streaming silently down her face. Evan wanted to comfort her, the way he'd comforted her 100 times before. But he stayed where he was, hands gripping the counter behind him, anchoring himself in place. Finally, Mia wiped her eyes and moved toward the door. She paused with her hand on the knob, looking back at him one last time. "I hope you find what you're looking for," she said. "I hope you do too." Then she was gone, and Evan was alone in his apartment again. But this time, the silence didn't feel oppressive. It felt clean. Like the closing of a chapter, the final period on a sentence that had run on too long. He pulled out his phone and found Serena's number, typed out a message before he could second-guess himself. "Thank you for tonight. I needed it more than I knew." Her response came 30 seconds later. "Thank you for saying yes." "Same time next Friday?" "Definitely." Evan set his phone down and looked around his apartment, the navy couch, the exposed brick, the life he'd built in this converted warehouse. It was his space, his home, and for the first time in 6 years, he didn't feel like he was waiting for someone else to make it complete. He felt like he was exactly where he needed to be. The second Friday came faster than Evan expected. The week passed in a blur of work and routine, but underneath the ordinary rhythm of construction schedules and crew meetings, Evan felt something new humming through his days. Anticipation. Not the anxious kind that came from waiting for bad news, but genuine excitement about seeing Serena again. They texted throughout the week, nothing heavy, just small observations and updates. She sent him a photo of a wallpaper sample she was considering for a client, asking his opinion. He sent her a picture of the sunrise from the 5th floor of the Low-Dough project, the city painted gold and pink. The messages were easy, comfortable, the kind of casual communication that felt natural rather than forced. Friday night arrived with clear skies and temperatures that promised fall was giving way to winter. Evan dressed with more care than usual, trading his typical jeans for charcoal slacks and a navy sweater that his brother had given him for Christmas 2 years ago. He looked at himself in the mirror and saw someone who looked hopeful, and that scared him more than he wanted to admit. They met at a different restaurant this time, an Italian place in Highland that Serena had discovered through a client. She was already seated when Evan arrived, wearing dark green that made her eyes luminous, her hair pulled back to expose elegant cheekbones, and a smile that made Evan's stomach flip. "You found it okay?" she asked as he sat down. GPS is a beautiful thing. They ordered wine again, fell into conversation as easily as breathing. Serena told him about a difficult client who wanted her to make a Victorian mansion look modern without changing anything structural. Evan told her about the plumbing disaster that had set them back another week on the Lodu project. Normal talk. Work talk. The kind of conversation that created intimacy through accumulated small truths rather than grand revelations. But underneath the ordinary topics, Evan felt electricity crackling. The way Serena's hand would brush his when she reached for her water glass. The way her eyes would linger on his face when he was talking, like she was memorizing the shape of his words. The way the air between them seemed charged with possibility. Halfway through dinner, Serena set down her fork and looked at him directly. I need to tell you something, and I need you to be honest with me about whether it's completely inappropriate. Evan's pulse quickened. Okay. I haven't been able to stop thinking about you. All week. And not in a concerned about how you're handling the breakup way. She took a breath. I'm attracted to you, Evan. I've been since Sunday. Maybe before that, if I'm being completely honest with myself. And I know that's complicated and potentially disastrous, but I'm 44 years old and I'm tired of pretending I don't feel things because they're inconvenient. Evan should have been shocked, should have felt conflicted or guilty or any number of appropriate emotions. Instead, he felt relief flood through him like light. I haven't stopped thinking about you either, he admitted, and I keep telling myself all the reasons this is a bad idea. You're Mia's mother. This is too soon after the breakup. People will talk. But then I remember how I felt last Friday, sitting across from you, and none of those reasons seem to matter. So what do we do? I have no idea. They stared at each other across the table, the question hanging between them like something fragile and precious. Around them, the restaurant continued its Friday night rhythm, couples laughing, glasses clinking, the comfortable noise of people enjoying themselves. But at their table, time seemed suspended. We could try, Serena said finally. Carefully, privately, just to see if this is real or if we're both just lonely and looking for connection. And if it's real, then we'll figure it out, together. Evan reached across the table and took her hand. Her fingers were cool and slender, and they fit against his like they'd been designed for exactly this purpose. Okay. Okay? Let's try. Serena's smile was brilliant and terrified and hopeful all at once. This is crazy. Probably. Mia is going to lose her mind. Eventually, but we don't have to tell her yet. We don't have to tell anyone yet. They finished dinner in a state of giddy nervousness, like teenagers sneaking around behind their parents' backs. When the check came, they split it despite Evan's protests, Serena insisting that if they were doing this, they were doing it as equals. Outside, the night had turned cold enough to see their breath. They stood between their cars again, but this time Serena didn't pull away after the hug. She stayed close, her hands resting on Evan's chest, her face tilted up toward his. I want to kiss you, she said, but I'm terrified. Of what? Of this being a mistake. Of hurting you. Of hurting Mia. Of this being exactly what I need and losing it. Evan understood every single fear. But he also understood that some risks were worth taking. He lowered his head slowly, giving her time to pull away, to change her mind, to choose safety over possibility. She didn't pull away. Their first kiss was gentle and searching, a question asked and answered without words. Serena tasted like wine and peppermint, and when her fingers curled into his sweater, Evan felt something inside him settle into place. This wasn't rebound desperation or grief-seeking comfort. This was real, electric, right in a way that made everything else fade into background noise. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Serena laughed, a sound of pure joy and disbelief. Oh no, she said. What? This is real. This is actually real. Is that a bad thing? It's terrifying. It's wonderful. It's going to be so complicated. She kissed him again, quick and fierce. And I don't care. I don't care about any of it. They made plans to see each other again. Tuesday, because waiting until next Friday seemed impossible. Serena's place this time, she insisted, because she wanted to cook for him and couldn't do that in a restaurant. Driving home, Evan felt like he was floating. His phone buzzed at a red light, a text from Serena. "Thank you for being brave enough to try this with me." He responded immediately. "Thank you for seeing me." The light turned green, and Evan drove home through streets that had never looked quite so bright, quite so full of possibility. And when he finally fell asleep that night, it was with a smile on his face and warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with wine or dinner. It had everything to do with a woman named Serena and the unexpected second chance they were building together, one careful step at a time. Tuesday evening found Evan standing outside a brownstone in Washington Park, holding a bottle of wine he'd spent 20 minutes selecting and second-guessing every decision that had led him to this moment. Serena's address had surprised him. He'd expected something sleek and modern, all glass and minimalism. Instead, her home was a restored Victorian with a wraparound porch and flower boxes that still held the last defiant blooms of autumn. He rang the bell, and footsteps approached from inside. When the door opened, Serena stood there in jeans and a soft ivory sweater, barefoot and smiling, and Evan felt his nervousness evaporate. "You found it," she said, stepping back to let him in. "You have excellent directions." The interior matched the exterior's charm. Hardwood floors, crown molding, furniture that managed to feel both elegant and lived in. Everything was in shades of cream and gray and soft blue, punctuated by pops of color from throw pillows and art on the walls. It felt like Serena, Evan realized, polished but warm, carefully curated but genuine. "This is beautiful," he said, following her through a hallway lined with photographs. He caught glimpses of Mia at various ages, Serena with friends, landscapes from places Evan had never been. "Thank you. I bought it after the divorce. My first completely independent decision in 15 years." She led him into a kitchen that smelled like garlic and herbs, where something was simmering on the stove and a salad waited on the counter. David wanted the house in Cherry Creek, the one we'd lived in for our entire marriage. I wanted something that was entirely mine. "You chose well." Serena handed him a corkscrew and 2 glasses. "Make yourself useful while I finish the pasta?" They moved around each other in the kitchen with surprising ease, Evan opening the wine while Serena stirred sauce and checked pasta that was boiling in a large pot. She'd set the table in the dining room, candles and simple white plates, cloth napkins that felt like an occasion. "This feels very domestic," Evan said, pouring wine into both glasses. "Is that bad?" "No, just unexpected. A week ago, I was eating takeout alone on my couch. Now I'm having a home-cooked meal with a beautiful woman who actually wants me here." Serena turned from the stove, her expression soft. "I do want you here, more than I probably should." They ate at the dining room table. Serena's homemade carbonara, rich and perfect, the kind of meal that felt like an expression of care. She asked about his family, and Evan found himself telling her about his mother in Colorado Springs, his brother Ryan and Ryan's girlfriend Chelsea, the complicated grief of losing his father, and how it had shaped everything that came after. "When my dad left, my mom worked 2 jobs to keep us fed," Evan said, twirling pasta on his fork. "She was exhausted all the time, but she never complained, never said anything bad about him, even though he deserved it. And I remember thinking, I'm never going to be like him. I'm never going to be the person who walks away." That's a heavy burden for a 12-year-old to carry. I didn't think of it as a burden. I thought of it as a promise. Evan took a sip of wine. But I think it made me hold on to things too long. Relationships, friendships, jobs. I stayed at my last construction company for 2 years after I should have left because I'd made a commitment. Stayed with Mia even when all the signs pointed to leaving. Loyalty isn't a weakness, Evan. It is when it becomes self-destruction. Serena reached across the table and took his hand. "You're learning. That's what matters." After dinner, they moved to the living room with fresh glasses of wine. Serena lit a fire in the fireplace, and they settled on opposite ends of the couch, close but not touching, testing boundaries neither of them had clearly defined. "Tell me about your divorce," Evan said. "Not the logistics, the emotional part, what it felt like." Serena tucked her feet under her, cradling her wine glass. "It felt like waking up from a very long dream. David and I had this whole life, the house, the friends, the routines. We had dinner parties and charity galas and vacations to places we thought we should go. And underneath all of it, I was so lonely I could barely breathe. Did you love him? I thought I did. I loved the idea of him, the life we built. But I don't think I ever knew him. Not really. And he certainly didn't know me. She stared into the fire, her profile illuminated by the dancing light. The worst part was realizing I'd spent 15 years performing. I was the good wife, the perfect hostess, the woman who always said the right thing at the right time. But I couldn't tell you what I actually wanted, what made me happy outside of making everyone else comfortable. That's why you started your business. Partly, but also because I needed to prove to myself that I could make something that was entirely mine, that my taste and choices mattered. She looked at him then, her eyes reflecting firelight. Does that sound selfish? It sounds human. They talked for hours, the conversation meandering through childhood memories and dreams deferred, and all the small revelations that build intimacy between two people willing to be vulnerable. Serena told him about growing up in Boulder, about her father's death when she was 16 and how it had made her desperate for security, the kind that led her straight into David's arms. Evan told her about construction, about the satisfaction of building things that would outlast him, about wanting to leave a mark on the world that mattered. What's your biggest fear? Serena asked as the fire burned low. Evan didn't hesitate. That I'm unlovable, that there's something fundamentally wrong with me that makes people leave. Evan, that's not... I know it's not rational, but my dad left, Mia left, and some part of me keeps waiting for the other shoe to drop, for the moment when whoever I'm with realizes I'm not worth staying for. Serena set down her wine glass and moved closer, closing the distance between them on the couch. She took Evan's face in both hands, her touch gentle but firm. Listen to me. You are worth staying for. You are worth choosing. And anyone who can't see that is missing out on something extraordinary. Evan's throat felt tight. You barely know me. I know enough. I know you show up. I know you're honest, even when it costs you. I know you look at me like I matter, like my words have weight. I know that sitting here with you feels more real than 15 years of marriage to a man I thought I was supposed to love. She leaned in, her forehead resting against his. I see you, Evan Cole. And I'm not going anywhere. When they kissed this time, it was different from the parking lot. Slower, deeper, weighted with intention. Evan's hands found her waist, and Serena's fingers tangled in his hair, and for a perfect stretch of time, nothing existed except the two of them and the fire, and the feeling of finding something you didn't know you'd been searching for. They pulled apart eventually, both breathing hard, and Serena laughed that same joyful, disbelieving laugh from Friday night. We should probably slow down, she said, but she didn't move away. Probably. This is complicated enough without rushing into something physical before we're ready. You're right. Neither of them moved. Evan? Yeah? I don't want to slow down. Me neither. But they did anyway. Some unspoken agreement that whatever was building between them deserved care and patience. Evan left around midnight after another hour of talking and carefully restrained kisses, and drove home feeling like a teenager who'd just had the best date of his life. His phone buzzed before he'd even made it back to his apartment. I miss you already. Is that crazy? He responded while sitting in his truck in the parking lot. Not crazy. I miss you too. Tuesday dinners could become a tradition. I'd like that. Sleep well, Evan. You too, Serena. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of stolen moments and careful secrecy. They fell into a rhythm. Tuesday dinners at Serena's place. Friday nights at restaurants carefully chosen to be outside their usual circles. Evan learned that Serena was a morning person who woke at 5:30 and ran 3 miles before coffee. That she had a weakness for British detective shows and terrible reality TV she watched ironically. That she hummed while she cooked and read 3 books at once and had opinions about everything from architecture to politics to the best pizza in Denver. Serena learned that Evan was quiet in the mornings, that he drank his coffee black and could fix almost anything with the right tools and enough patience, that he had a dry sense of humor that caught her off guard and made her laugh in public places, that he listened with his whole body, leaning in when she talked like her words were the most important thing in the world. They were careful. No social media posts, no public displays of affection, no mention of each other to friends or family. It felt like living in a bubble, separate from their regular lives, and while part of Evan knew it couldn't last forever, he wasn't ready to burst it yet. The complications arrived on a Wednesday afternoon in mid-November. Evan was on site when his phone rang with Serena's name. She never called during work hours. Their unspoken rule was texts only until evening, so he answered immediately. "Serena, everything okay?" Mia knows. Her voice was tight, controlled in a way that told Evan she was barely holding it together. "She saw us last night, leaving the restaurant. She texted me this morning. She's furious." Evan's stomach dropped. They'd been so careful, choosing places outside both their neighborhoods, timing their arrivals and departures. But Denver was a small city in the ways that mattered, and apparently their luck had run out. "What did she say?" "Nothing good. She wants to meet with me today. Just me. She was very clear about that." Serena's voice wavered. "Evan, I'm scared. I've never kept anything from her before, and now she thinks I've betrayed her." "You haven't betrayed anyone. That's not how she's going to see it." Evan looked around the construction site, at his crew working and the building rising and all the tangible proof that he knew how to build things. But this, navigating the emotional minefield of his relationship with his ex-girlfriend's mother, required skills he didn't have. "Do you want me to be there?" he asked, "when you talk to her?" "No, this is between me and my daughter. But Evan, whatever she says to me, whatever happens, this doesn't change how I feel about you." "You don't know what she's going to say." "I don't care. You and I, what we have, it's real. And I'm not giving it up because it's inconvenient or because people don't understand." After they hung up, Evan tried to focus on work, but his mind kept circling back to Serena and Mia, to the confrontation happening somewhere in Denver right now. He imagined Mia's anger, her sense of betrayal. He remembered standing in her apartment 3 weeks ago, watching her cry, telling her they were done. Had she moved on? Or was this going to shatter whatever fragile peace she'd made with their breakup? His phone stayed silent all afternoon. By the time Evan made it home that evening, he was wound so tight he could barely think straight. He showered, changed, paced his apartment like a caged animal. At 7:30, Serena finally called. "How bad was it?" Evan asked instead of hello. Serena's laugh was hollow. "Worse than I expected, better than I feared, somewhere in between." "Tell me, can you come over? I don't want to do this on the phone." 30 minutes later, Evan was back at the brownstone in Washington Park. Serena opened the door looking exhausted, her eyes red-rimmed but dry. She led him to the living room where 2 mugs of tea sat cooling on the coffee table. "She called me a liar," Serena said once they were settled on the couch. "Said I'd been lying to her for weeks, sneaking around with her ex-boyfriend like some kind of predator." Evan flinched at the word. "Serena, she said I was having a midlife crisis. That I was pathetic for dating someone 15 years younger, someone who was only with me to get back at her." Serena's hands were shaking around her tea mug. "She said I'd ruined our relationship, that she'd never trust me again." "What did you say?" I told her the truth. That I didn't plan this, that it surprised me as much as it surprised her, that you and I connected after she ended things, that we tried to resist it but couldn't, that I'm not apologizing for finding something real with someone who treats me like I matter. How did she respond? She told me I was delusional if I thought this was anything more than a rebound for you, that you'd wake up in a few months and realize what a mistake this was, and I'd be left looking like a fool who threw away her relationship with her daughter for a man who was never going to stay. The words hit Evan like physical blows. He set down his own tea before he dropped it. That's not true. Any of it. I know that, but Mia doesn't. She can't see past her own hurt to understand that the world doesn't revolve around her. Serena finally looked at him, and her eyes were fierce despite the tears. She gave me an ultimatum. Stop seeing you or she's done with me. No more calls, no more visits. I'd be choosing you over my daughter. Evan's heart stopped. What did you tell her? I told her I loved her, but I wasn't giving you up. That she doesn't get to dictate who I date or how I live my life just because it makes her uncomfortable. That if she needs space to process this, I'll give it to her, but I'm not apologizing for being happy. Serena, you can't sacrifice your relationship with your daughter for me. I'm not sacrificing anything. I'm setting a boundary. For the first time in my life, I'm choosing what I want instead of contorting myself to make someone else comfortable. She set down her tea and took both of Evan's hands. Mia is an adult, and she ended your relationship. She doesn't get to control what happens after, and she doesn't get to manipulate me with guilt because I found happiness with someone she decided she didn't want. People are going to talk. Let them talk. Your friends, your clients, this is going to get messy. I don't care. Serena's voice was steady now, certain. I spent 15 years in a marriage where I cared too much what people thought, where I made myself small to fit other people's expectations. I'm not doing that anymore. Not for Mia, not for anyone. Evan pulled her close, and Serena buried her face against his shoulder. He felt her shaking, felt the weight of what she'd just chosen, the cost of standing up for their relationship, and he made a decision of his own. I love you, he said into her hair. Serena went very still. What? I love you. I know it's fast, I know it's complicated, but I need you to know this isn't a rebound. This isn't me trying to get back at Mia or fill some void. You're the most incredible woman I've ever met, and I'm in love with you. She pulled back to look at him, her eyes searching his face. You mean that? Every word. I love you too. She said it like a confession, like something she'd been holding back. I've been in love with you for weeks, and it terrifies me, but it's true. They kissed like the world was ending, like they were the only two people who mattered, like love was enough to overcome every obstacle in their path. And maybe it wasn't, Evan thought. Maybe the gossip and judgment and Mia's anger would eventually tear them apart. But right now, holding Serena in his arms and feeling her heart beat against his, Evan chose to believe that some things were worth fighting for, that some people were worth choosing, even when the cost was high. The following weeks tested that belief in ways Evan hadn't anticipated. Word spread through Denver's interconnected social circles like wildfire. Mia Hart's mother was dating Mia's ex-boyfriend, and wasn't that just scandalous? Evan heard whispers at construction sites, saw knowing looks from acquaintances. His brother Ryan called, concerned and confused, asking if Evan had lost his mind. Let me get this straight, Ryan said over drinks at a bar near Evan's apartment. You're dating Mia's mom, her actual mother. Her name is Serena. I know her name. I met her at Mia's graduation party. She seemed nice. Also, she's old enough to be... Finish that sentence and I'm leaving. Ryan held up his hands in surrender. Fine. But you have to admit, this is weird, like objectively weird. It's unconventional. It's going to make Thanksgiving really awkward. Evan sipped his beer, trying to find words to explain something he barely understood himself. Do you remember after Dad left, how Mom used to say that love isn't about finding someone perfect. It's about finding someone who makes you want to be better? Yeah. Serena makes me want to be better. She sees me, really sees me, and she doesn't try to change what she finds. She just accepts it and makes space for it. And when I'm with her, I feel like I finally understand what Mom meant. Ryan was quiet for a long moment, studying his brother's face. You're serious about this? Completely. And you're happy? Happier than I've been in years. Then screw everyone else. Ryan raised his beer bottle. To unconventional love and not giving a damn what people think. Evan clinked his bottle against Ryan's, grateful for the support, even if it came wrapped in skepticism. But Ryan's acceptance was the exception, not the rule. Serena faced worse. 2 of her longtime clients canceled their contracts, citing vague reasons but making it clear through mutual friends that they found her relationship inappropriate. Her book club asked her to step back from hosting. Even some of her friends began keeping distance, uncertain how to navigate the social awkwardness. Through it all, Mia stayed silent. No calls, no texts, nothing. Serena tried reaching out twice, once by text, once leaving a voicemail, but received no response. The silence hurt worse than anger would have, Serena confessed to Evan one night. At least anger meant Mia still cared enough to engage. She'll come around, Evan said, though he had no idea if it was true. And if she doesn't, then we'll deal with it. Together. They stopped hiding, started going to restaurants in their own neighborhoods, holding hands in public, being seen together without apology. The stares and whispers followed them everywhere, but Evan found he cared less each time. What mattered was the woman beside him, The way she laughed at his jokes and challenged his assumptions and made him feel like he was exactly enough. December arrived with snow and holiday parties neither of them particularly wanted to attend. Evan's company threw their annual celebration at a hotel downtown, and he brought Serena as his date, introducing her to colleagues who knew exactly who she was and chose to be kind about it anyway. "Your crew likes you," Serena observed on the drive home, snowflakes drifting past the truck windows. They were protective. Danny threatened to fight anyone who said anything negative. He's become weirdly invested in our relationship. Smart man. Serena reached over and laced her fingers through Evan's. "I have something to tell you, and I don't know how you're going to react." Evan's grip tightened involuntarily. "That sounds ominous." "It's not bad. At least, I don't think it is. But it's unexpected, and it's going to complicate things even more than they already are." "Serena, you're scaring me." She took a deep breath. "I'm pregnant." The truck swerved slightly before Evan corrected, his brain struggling to process the words he'd just heard. "You're what?" "Pregnant. 6 weeks, according to the doctor I saw yesterday. Which means it happened that first Tuesday at my house. And I know we were careful, but apparently not careful enough. And I understand if this is too much. If you need time to think, stop." Evan pulled the truck over to the side of the road, throwing it into park. He turned to face Serena, whose eyes were wide and terrified in the glow of the dashboard lights. "Say it again." "I'm pregnant." "And you want to keep it?" "I do. I know it's complicated. I know I'm 44 and this is considered high risk, and people are going to have even more to say about us now, but yes, I want to keep it." Her hands rested on her stomach, protective. "But I need to know where you stand, Evan. This isn't what we signed up for. If you want to walk away, I'll understand." Evan felt like he was standing on a cliff edge, looking down at his life about to change in ways he couldn't predict or control. 3 months ago, he'd been planning to propose to Mia. Now he was sitting in his truck with Mia's mother, who just told him she was pregnant with his child. It should have felt like a disaster. It should have sent him running. Instead, Evan felt something settle in his chest, a sense of rightness, of purpose, of finally being exactly where he was supposed to be. "I'm not walking away," he said. "I'm staying. We're doing this together." Serena's eyes filled with tears. "You mean that?" "I've never meant anything more in my life." He cupped her face in his hands, thumbs brushing away the tears that spilled down her cheeks. "I love you. I want a life with you. And yeah, this is happening faster than either of us planned, but since when has our relationship followed any kind of normal timeline?" She laughed through her tears, the sound breaking and beautiful. "Never. We've been a disaster from the start. The best kind of disaster." They sat in the truck on the side of the road while snow accumulated on the windshield, making plans and promises and facing the reality of what came next. Doctor's appointments, telling their families, and eventually, inevitably, telling Mia. "She's going to think I got pregnant on purpose," Serena said quietly, "to trap you or punish her or something equally calculated. Then we'll prove her wrong." "How?" "By being happy. By building a life together that's so obviously real that even Mia can't pretend it's anything else." Serena kissed him then, soft and grateful and full of hope. "When did you get so wise?" "I've had good teachers." They made it back to Serena's house, and Evan stayed the night for the first time, holding her close and trying not to think about everything that could go wrong. Instead, he focused on the steady rhythm of her breathing, the warmth of her body pressed against his, the improbable miracle of finding love in the wreckage of heartbreak. Tomorrow, they'd face the world and its judgment. Tomorrow, they'd start navigating the impossible complexity of their situation. But tonight, they had each other, and that was enough. Morning came with pale winter light filtering through Serena's bedroom curtains, and for a moment, Evan forgot where he was. Then he felt the warmth of her body beside him, saw the dark spill of her hair across the pillow, and remembered everything. The pregnancy, the choice he'd made to stay, the future that was suddenly rushing toward them at a speed that should have terrified him but somehow didn't. Serena stirred, her eyes opening slowly. When she saw him watching her, a smile curved her lips. "You're still here," she murmured. "Where else would I be?" "I thought maybe I dreamed last night." The whole conversation in the truck. Evan's hand found hers beneath the covers, their fingers interlacing. Not a dream. You're pregnant, I'm staying, and we're doing this. Just like that? Just like that. She shifted closer, resting her head on his shoulder. I have an appointment with a specialist next week. High-risk pregnancy at my age requires more monitoring. Will you come with me? Of course. People are going to stare. A 44-year-old woman and her 27-year-old boyfriend at the OB/GYN will be the talk of the waiting room. Let them talk. Evan pressed a kiss to her forehead. I'm done caring what strangers think. They stayed in bed longer than they should have, talking through logistics and fears and the strange reality of their situation. Serena had to tell her doctor about the relationship timeline, had to be honest about stress levels and family complications that could affect the pregnancy. Evan needed to tell his mother before she heard it through Denver's relentless grapevine, and eventually, one way or another, they had to tell Mia. Not yet, Serena said when Evan brought up her daughter. I can't face her anger right now, not when everything feels so fragile. She deserves to know. I know, but can we be selfish for just a little longer? Can we keep this between us until we're sure everything is okay? Evan understood the fear beneath the request. At 44, Serena's pregnancy carried risks that neither of them wanted to voice out loud. Miscarriage, complications, a dozen medical concerns that the specialist would undoubtedly detail at next week's appointment. Better to wait until they had more information, more certainty, before inviting Mia's rage into an already complicated situation. Okay, he agreed. We wait, but not forever. Not forever, Serena echoed. The following week passed in a strange suspension of normal life. Evan went to work, managed his crew, pushed the Loto project toward completion. But his mind was constantly elsewhere, counting days until the specialist appointment, researching pregnancy at advanced maternal age on his phone during lunch breaks, trying to prepare himself for whatever news the doctor might deliver. Serena threw herself into work with the intensity that worried him. She took on 2 new clients, stayed up late reviewing paint samples and furniture catalogs, filled every moment with activity that kept her from thinking too hard about what was growing inside her. When Evan mentioned it gently one night over dinner, she set down her fork and met his eyes. If I stop moving, I'll panic, she said simply. I'll start cataloging everything that could go wrong, all the ways this could end badly. So I'm staying busy until we know more. And if the news is bad, then we'll deal with it, together, like you said. The specialist appointment was scheduled for Thursday afternoon. Evan left the construction site early, ignoring Danny's knowing look and avoiding questions about where he was going. He picked up Serena at her house, and they drove to the medical complex in Cherry Creek in nervous silence. The waiting room was exactly as Serena had predicted, full of couples in their 20s and early 30s, women with neat baby bumps and partners who looked appropriately excited and terrified. Evan and Serena drew stares the moment they walked in. He saw the calculations happening on faces around the room, saw judgment and curiosity, and the occasional flash of something that might have been sympathy. I hate this, Serena whispered, gripping Evan's hand so tightly his fingers went numb. I know, but we're here. That's what matters. They filled out paperwork that asked invasive questions about medical history and family complications. Serena's hand shook slightly as she wrote, and Evan wanted to take the clipboard from her and fill it out himself, spare her this additional stress. But he stayed quiet, offering presence instead of interference. When Serena's name was finally called, they stood together and followed a nurse down a hallway decorated with inspirational quotes about motherhood and baby footprints in various pastel shades. The exam room was standard medical, sterile, impersonal, smelling faintly of antiseptic. The nurse took Serena's vitals, asked more questions, and told them the doctor would be in shortly. Alone in the room, Serena sat on the exam table while Evan took the chair beside her. She looked small, perched there in her jeans and sweater, vulnerable in a way he'd never seen before. Whatever happens, he said, we're okay. You and me. We're okay. Promise? I promise. Dr. Chen arrived 15 minutes later, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and an efficient manner. She reviewed Serena's chart, asked follow-up questions about her medical history and the pregnancy timeline, and explained with clinical precision exactly what high risk meant at 44. The statistics aren't encouraging, she said frankly. Women your age have a significantly higher risk of miscarriage, gestational diabetes, preeclampsia, and chromosomal abnormalities. We'll need to monitor you closely throughout the pregnancy with more frequent appointments and additional testing. Serena's face had gone pale. What are the actual odds of carrying to term? With proper medical care, about 60%. But I won't lie to you, Ms. Hart. This pregnancy requires vigilance and probably some lifestyle modifications, reduced stress, careful diet, possibly bed rest in the later stages. And the baby, if everything goes well? We'll do an ultrasound today to check development and get a more accurate due date. Then we'll schedule genetic testing around week 12 to screen for abnormalities. Dr. Chen's expression softened slightly. I know this sounds frightening, but you're healthy, you're active, and you've got good family support. Those factors make a significant difference. She gestured to the ultrasound machine in the corner. Let's take a look, shall we? The next 20 minutes passed in a blur of medical procedure and tense silence. Serena lay back on the exam table, her shirt pushed up to expose her still flat stomach. Dr. Chen applied gel and moved the ultrasound wand across Serena's skin, eyes fixed on a screen that Evan couldn't interpret. Then, cutting through the quiet, a sound filled the room, fast and rhythmic, like a tiny drum beating double time. Is that? Serena's voice broke. That's the heartbeat, Dr. Chen confirmed, a smile breaking through her professional demeanor. Strong and steady. Let me get some measurements. Evan stared at the screen, at the grainy black and white image that showed something impossibly small but unmistakably real. A flutter of movement, a curve that might become a spine, the rapid pulse that meant life. His life, their life. A person who didn't exist 3 months ago and was now the most important thing in the world. Everything looks good, Dr. Chen said, clicking keys and taking measurements. You're measuring at 6 weeks and 4 days, which matches your timeline. I'm not seeing any immediate concerns, but again, we'll monitor closely. Serena was crying, tears streaming silently down her temples while she stared at the screen. Evan moved to her side, taking her hand, and they watched their impossible child together while the heartbeat filled the room like a promise. Dr. Chen printed out ultrasound photos, scheduled follow-up appointments, and gave Serena a folder full of information about prenatal vitamins and diet and warning signs to watch for. By the time they made it back to Evan's truck, Serena was clutching the ultrasound photos like they were made of gold. It's real, she said, her voice full of wonder and terror. There's actually a baby. Our baby. She looked at him, and her eyes were luminous. Are you scared? Terrified, but also, I don't know how to describe it. Happy? Grateful? Like everything that happened before was leading to this moment? I feel the same way. Which is insane because this is objectively terrifying and complicated and probably the worst timing possible. Or the best timing, Evan countered. We found each other when we were both ready to be honest about what we wanted. That seems pretty perfect to me. They went back to Serena's house and spent the evening talking through the reality of what came next. Serena would need to cut back on work, delegate more to her assistant, prioritize rest over the relentless activity she'd been using to avoid her fears. Evan would need to tell his family before the pregnancy became obvious, and they both needed to prepare for the conversation with Mia that was becoming increasingly unavoidable. She's going to think I did this on purpose, Serena said, for the 100th time, curled against Evan's side on her couch. That I got pregnant to trap you or stake some kind of claim. Then we'll show her the timeline. Prove that this was accidental. You think she'll believe us? I think eventually she'll have to accept that this is happening whether she likes it or not. And maybe, if we're lucky, she'll realize that her anger is hurting her more than it's hurting us. Serena didn't look convinced, but she nodded against his shoulder. I miss her. Even angry and stubborn and completely unreasonable, she's still my daughter. I miss talking to her. Have you tried reaching out again? Twice this week. She's not responding. Serena's voice went quiet. What if she never forgives me? Then you'll survive it. You're stronger than you think. I don't feel strong. Evan kissed the top of her head. Strength isn't about feeling fearless. It's about being terrified and doing the thing anyway. And you've been doing that since the day you showed up at my apartment. Friday night, Evan finally told his mother. He drove to Colorado Springs alone, knowing this conversation needed to happen face to face, and found her in the kitchen of the house where he'd grown up. Linda Cole was 56, with gray-streaked hair she refused to dye, and laugh lines that came from years of finding humor in hardship. "Evan, honey, this is a surprise." She wrapped him in a hug that smelled like vanilla and home. "I thought you were too busy with work to visit. I need to talk to you about something important." Linda's smile faded. "Sit. I'll make coffee." They settled at the kitchen table, the same scarred wooden surface where Evan had done homework and eaten countless meals and learned what it meant to be part of a family, even after half of it walked away. Linda poured coffee into mismatched mugs and waited with the patience of someone who'd raised 2 boys through every kind of crisis. "I'm seeing someone," Evan started. "It's serious. And before you ask, it's not Mia." "I heard you two broke up. I'm sorry, sweetheart." "Don't be. It was the right choice for both of us." Evan wrapped his hands around his coffee mug. "The woman I'm seeing is named Serena. She's intelligent and kind, and she makes me happier than I've been in years." "That's wonderful. When do I get to meet her?" "Soon, but there's something you need to know first." He took a breath. "Serena is Mia's mother." Linda's coffee mug stopped halfway to her mouth. She set it down carefully, her eyes never leaving her son's face. "Mia's mother, as in your ex-girlfriend's mother?" "Yes." "How old is she?" 44. "And you're 27. "I'm aware of the age difference, Mom." Linda was quiet for a long moment, processing. Evan had expected judgment, shock, maybe anger. Instead, when she finally spoke, her voice was thoughtful. "Does she make you happy?" "Incredibly happy." "Does she treat you well?" "Better than I knew I deserved." "And this isn't some rebound thing, some way of getting back at Mia?" "No, I love her, completely, and she loves me." Linda studied her son's face with the intensity of someone who'd spent years learning to read beneath surface emotions. Whatever she saw there must have satisfied her because she nodded slowly. "Okay then." Evan blinked. "Okay? That's it?" "What do you want me to say, Evan? That it's unconventional? That people will talk? You already know that. What you need to hear from me is that your happiness matters more than anyone else's opinion." She reached across the table and took his hand. "After your father left, I watched you turn into someone who was so afraid of abandonment that you made yourself invisible. You stayed small, asked for nothing, tried to be whatever you thought people needed you to be. If this woman makes you feel like you can take up space in the world, like you matter exactly as you are, then I don't care how old she is or who her daughter is. She's good for you." Evan felt his throat tighten. "There's more." "More?" "She's pregnant. We're having a baby." Linda's eyes widened, genuine shock replacing her measured calm. "Oh. Oh my. That's certainly fast." "It was an accident, but we're keeping it. We want this." "And you're sure?" "Because Evan, a baby is—" "I'm sure. Terrified, but sure." Linda stood and moved around the table, pulling Evan into another hug. He let himself be held, let himself feel like someone's child instead of someone about to become a parent, and something in his chest unknotted. "When do I meet her?" Linda asked, pulling back to look at him. "Soon. She's nervous about meeting you." "She should be. I'm going to have a lot of questions." But Linda was smiling, and Evan knew they'd be okay. His mother might not understand everything about his relationship with Serena, but she understood love. She understood choosing happiness despite the odds. That night, driving back to Denver through darkness and scattered snow, Evan called Serena and told her about the conversation. She cried with relief, and Evan realized how much weight she'd been carrying, how much she'd feared being rejected by the people who mattered to him. "Your mother sounds wonderful," Serena said when she'd collected herself. "She is, and she's going to love you. Or she'll hate me for corrupting her son." "Impossible. I was already corrupted when you found me." Serena's laugh was watery but genuine. "Thank you for standing up for us, for not hiding what we are. What we are is in love. I'm not hiding that from anyone." "Not even from Mia?" Evan's grip tightened on the steering wheel. "Especially not from Mia. She needs to know, Serena. About us, about the baby, all of it. I know. I'm not ready. When will you be ready? Silence stretched between them, filled only by the hum of tires on pavement and the whisper of falling snow against the windshield. After the 12-week scan, Serena said finally, once we're past the highest risk period, once we know the baby is developing normally, then we'll tell her everything. Okay, we wait until after the scan. Evan could do that, could give Serena the time she needed to prepare for the confrontation that was coming. But after that, no more hiding. We tell everyone, friends, colleagues, random strangers who stare at us in restaurants. This is our life, our family, and I'm done apologizing for it. Deal. The next month felt like preparation for a storm Evan could see building on the horizon, but couldn't quite avoid. He and Serena settled into a routine that centered around doctor's appointments and quiet evenings at her house. They painted the spare bedroom a soft yellow. Neutral, Serena insisted, because they didn't want to know the gender yet. They bought pregnancy books and read them together, Evan highlighting passages about what to expect while Serena fell asleep against his shoulder. Work on the Lodu project finally came together. After months of delays and setbacks, Evan's crew finished the apartment building ahead of the revised schedule. His bosses at Bridgepoint Development were impressed enough to hint at a promotion, more responsibility, projects that would establish Evan's reputation in Denver's construction community. You should take it, Serena said when he mentioned the opportunity. They were having dinner at her house, as had become their habit most nights. You've earned it. It would mean longer hours, less flexibility. We'll figure it out. I'm not going to be the person who holds you back from your career. You're not holding me back from anything. You're giving me a reason to build something that matters. Serena reached across the table, her hand finding his. Have I told you lately that I love you? Not in the last hour. I love you completely, inconveniently, in ways that scare me. Same. December became January and Serena's pregnancy progressed without complications. The morning sickness was brutal. Evan learned to keep ginger ale and crackers stocked at both their places. But Dr. Chen assured them that was actually a good sign. Everything was developing normally. The 12-week scan was scheduled for the second week of January, and after that, they'd tell Mia. Evan tried not to think too hard about that conversation, about Mia's inevitable anger, the accusations that would follow, the way this news would shatter whatever fragile hope Serena had of eventually reconciling with her daughter. But late at night, lying awake while Serena slept beside him, Evan couldn't help but wonder if they were making a mistake. If loving each other was selfish when it cost Serena her relationship with Mia. The 12-week appointment arrived on a Tuesday morning. Evan took the day off work, and they drove to Dr. Chen's office in nervous silence. The waiting room was familiar now, though the stairs still bothered Evan more than he wanted to admit. But Serena seemed calmer this time, more certain, her hand steady in his as they waited to be called back. The ultrasound showed a baby that looked impossibly human now, tiny hands and feet, a head that seemed too large for the body, a heart that beat strong and fast. Dr. Chen took measurements, checked development, and smiled more than Evan had ever seen her smile. Everything looks perfect, she announced. All the markers are where they should be. Growth is right on track. I'm not seeing any red flags. And the genetic testing? Serena asked, her voice tight. Results should be back in a week or so, but based on what I'm seeing today, I'm optimistic. Dr. Chen printed more photos, updated charts, and scheduled the next appointment. You're officially out of the highest risk zone. Congratulations. In the truck afterward, Serena stared at the ultrasound photo with wonder and terror warring on her face. We have to tell her, she said quietly. I can't put it off anymore. I know. She's going to hate me. Maybe, or maybe she'll surprise us. Serena's laugh was bitter. When has Mia ever surprised anyone by being reasonable? They decided to tell her that weekend. Serena would reach out, ask Mia to meet for coffee, and break the news in public where Mia's reaction would hopefully be constrained by social convention. It wasn't much of a plan, but it was something. Friday night, Serena texted her daughter. I need to talk to you. Can we meet for coffee tomorrow? Please. This is important. The response came 30 minutes later. Fine. The coffee shop on Colfax, 10 a.m. This better not be about him. Serena showed Evan the text, and he saw her hands shaking. "I'll come with you," he offered. "No, this needs to be between me and her, at least at first." "Serena, please, Evan, let me do this my way. I'll tell her everything about us, about the pregnancy, all of it. And then, if she wants to meet you, if she has questions, you can be there. But I need to face her alone first." Evan didn't like it, didn't want Serena walking into that confrontation without support. But he understood the instinct, the maternal need to protect the relationship with her daughter, even as that relationship was fracturing beyond repair. "Okay," he agreed. "You tell her alone, but I'm a phone call away if you need me." "I love you. I love you too. And Serena, whatever happens tomorrow, we're okay. You and me and this baby, we're okay." She kissed him like she was memorizing the taste of certainty before walking into chaos. And maybe she was. Saturday morning arrived gray and cold, the kind of January day that made Denver feel more like the mountains it nestled against than the city it pretended to be. Evan spent the morning pacing his apartment, checking his phone obsessively, trying and failing to focus on anything other than what was happening across town. Serena had promised to text him after the meeting, let him know how it went, whether Mia had responded with anger or understanding or something in between. But as 10 o'clock became 11, then noon, and his phone stayed silent, Evan's anxiety morphed into genuine worry. At 12:30, his phone finally rang. "Serena, are you okay? Can you come get me?" Her voice was hollow, scraped raw. "I'm at the coffee shop still. I can't drive right now." "I'm on my way." Evan broke every speed limit getting across Denver. He found Serena sitting alone at an outdoor table despite the cold, wrapped in her coat and staring at nothing. Her eyes were red and swollen, her face blotchy from crying. When she saw him, something in her expression crumbled. "It was worse than I imagined," she said as Evan pulled her into his arms. "So much worse." Evan held Serena in the parking lot of that coffee shop while January wind cut through their clothes and the world continued its indifferent rotation around them. She shook in his arms, not from cold, but from the kind of emotional devastation that left physical marks. When she finally pulled back enough to look at him, her eyes were haunted. "Tell me what happened," Evan said gently. "Can we go somewhere else? I can't stay here." They went back to Serena's house, Evan driving her car while she sat in the passenger seat and stared out the window at nothing. Inside, he made tea neither of them would drink and waited for Serena to find words for whatever had broken her this completely. "She was already angry when she arrived," Serena began, her voice flat and distant. "I could see it in the way she walked, the way she sat down without ordering anything or saying hello. Just sat there with her arms crossed, waiting for me to start so she could attack." "What did you tell her?" "Everything. That I loved you, that this wasn't some midlife crisis or revenge plot, that we'd tried to stay away from each other but couldn't, that you made me happy in ways I didn't know I could be happy." Serena's hands twisted in her lap. "I told her I was sorry for the timing, sorry that it hurt her, but I wasn't sorry for choosing you." How did she respond? She laughed, this terrible, bitter laugh that sounded nothing like my daughter, and she said I was pathetic, that I was so desperate for male attention after my divorce that I'd stolen her boyfriend just to feel young again, that I was delusional if I thought a 27-year-old construction worker actually loved me. Evan felt rage flare hot in his chest. "She doesn't know what she's talking about. She said you were using me, that you'd figured out I had money from the divorce settlement and you were playing the long game, pretending to care until you could get your hands on it. She called you." Serena's voice broke. "She called you a gold-digging loser who couldn't hold on to a woman his own age, so he settled for her desperate mother instead." "Serena, look at me." Evan waited until her eyes met his. "None of that is true. Not one word. I love you. Not your money, not your connection to Mia, just you. The woman who showed up at my apartment when I was falling apart. The woman who makes me laugh and challenges me and sees me as someone worth choosing. I do know that, but hearing her say those things, seeing the hatred in her eyes, fresh tears spilled down Serena's cheeks. That's when I told her about the baby." Evan's stomach dropped. "And?" She went completely still, just stared at me like I'd slapped her. Then she asked if I'd gotten pregnant on purpose, if this was my plan all along, get knocked up so you'd have to stay with me. I showed her the ultrasound photos, tried to explain that it was an accident, that we were being careful, but sometimes life happens. She wouldn't even look at them. What did she say? Serena's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. She said I was disgusting, that I was ruining her life, embarrassing her in front of everyone she knows, that she'd spent 6 years with you and you never wanted kids with her, but suddenly I'm pregnant after 3 months and she's supposed to believe that's coincidence? Mia and I never seriously discussed kids. She made it clear she wasn't interested in that future. I told her that. She didn't care. She said I'd manipulated you, that I'd baby-trapped you, that in 6 months or a year you'd wake up and realize you'd thrown your life away on a middle-aged woman and her unwanted pregnancy. Serena was crying openly now, the words tumbling out like poison she needed to purge. Then she stood up, said she was done, that I'd made my choice, and now I'd have to live with the consequences. That she never wanted to see me again, never wanted to hear from me, and if I tried to contact her, she'd get a restraining order. She was angry. She didn't mean, she meant every word. I could see it, Evan, the finality. She looked at me like I was a stranger she hated, and then she just walked away. Serena buried her face in her hands. I've lost her. I've lost my daughter. Evan pulled Serena close and let her cry, her tears soaking through his shirt while he murmured meaningless reassurances and tried to contain his own fury at Mia's cruelty. This wasn't grief-talking or temporary anger. This was calculated destruction, designed to hurt Serena in the deepest way possible. She'll come around, Evan said, not believing it, but needing to offer hope. Once the shock wears off, once she has time to process, you didn't see her face. She's not coming around. She's cutting me out of her life, and there's nothing I can do about it. Serena pulled back, wiping at her eyes with trembling hands. Maybe she's right. Maybe I am selfish. I chose you over my relationship with my daughter. What kind of mother does that? The kind who deserves to be happy. The kind who refused to sacrifice her own life to make her adult daughter comfortable. But at what cost? I'm having a baby, Evan. Our baby. And that child is going to grow up knowing their half-sister hates them, that their existence destroyed a family. That child is going to grow up knowing they're loved, by both of us, completely and without reservation. Evan took Serena's face in his hands, forcing her to meet his eyes. What Mia said today was cruel and unfair, but it doesn't change anything about us. It doesn't change the fact that I love you, that we're building a family together, that this baby is wanted and celebrated. I'm so tired of fighting, Serena whispered. Tired of defending our relationship, tired of justifying my choices, tired of trying to make everyone else understand. Then stop fighting, stop defending. We know what we are. We know this is real. Everyone else can either accept it or stay away. They spent the rest of that Saturday wrapped in each other, Serena crying intermittently while Evan held her and tried to absorb some of her pain. By evening, she'd cried herself into exhaustion and fell asleep on the couch with her head in Evan's lap. He sat there in the gathering darkness, one hand resting protectively on her stomach where their child was growing, and made a decision. Mia wanted to paint him as a gold digger, a user, someone taking advantage of her mother? Fine. Let her believe whatever made her feel better about walking away. But Evan was done letting Mia's anger dictate their lives. Done hiding, done apologizing, done treating their relationship like something shameful. Monday morning, Evan walked into his brother's apartment unannounced. Ryan answered the door in sweatpants and a t-shirt, clearly having just woken up despite it being nearly 9. Evan? What are you doing here? I need your help with something. Ryan stepped aside, gesturing Evan into the chaos of his living room. This sounds ominous. Want coffee? I want you to help me pick out an engagement ring. Ryan froze halfway to the kitchen. You're proposing? To Serena? Yes. You've been together for 3 months. I know. She's pregnant. I know that too. And you're sure this isn't just... It's not obligation. It's not panic. It's not me trying to do the right thing. Evan met his brother's eyes. I love her. I want to marry her. I want to build a life with her and our child. And I don't want to wait until the timing is perfect or everyone approves, because that's never going to happen. Ryan studied his brother for a long moment, then broke into a grin. Okay then, let's go buy a ring. They spent the morning hitting jewelry stores across Denver, Evan explaining what he was looking for. Nothing too flashy, something elegant and timeless, something that reflected who Serena was rather than some generic idea of what an engagement ring should be. At the fourth store, he found it. A simple platinum band with a single oval diamond, clean lines, and understated elegance that was pure Serena. That's the one, Ryan confirmed, seeing Evan's expression. When are you going to ask her? Soon. I need to figure out how first. Skywriting, flash mob, jumbotron at a Nuggets game? Definitely nothing public. Serena would hate that. Ryan clapped him on the shoulder as they left the jeweler. For what it's worth, I think you're making the right choice. Not the conventional choice, not the one that makes everyone comfortable, but the right one for you. Thanks, man. And Evan? Mia's an adult. Her relationship with her mother is her responsibility, not yours. You can't fix that, and you shouldn't try. The ring burned a hole in Evan's pocket for the next week while he planned. He wanted it to be meaningful, not grand, private, not performative. Something that honored what they'd built together rather than trying to impress anyone else. The answer came to him on a Wednesday evening. He and Serena were at her house, cooking dinner together like they did most nights. She was chopping vegetables while Evan handled the pasta, and they were trading stories about their days and the easy rhythm they'd developed. Serena looked beautiful in the kitchen light, her face relaxed and happy despite everything they'd been through. And Evan realized he didn't need a perfect moment. He already had one. Serena? She didn't look up from the cutting board. I need you to look at me for a second. Something in his tone made her set down the knife and turn. Evan was already on one knee, the ring box open in his hand. What are you? Evan, I know this is fast. I know people will say we're rushing, that I'm only doing this because of the baby, that we haven't known each other long enough. But I don't care what people say anymore. He watched emotions cascade across her face. Shock, disbelief, hope. You're the bravest person I've ever met. You walked away from a marriage that was killing you slowly. You started over when most people would have played it safe. You chose happiness even when it cost you relationships you valued. And you saw me, really saw me, when I felt invisible. Evan, you don't have to. I want to. Not because you're pregnant. Not because it's the right thing to do, because I love you, because I want to wake up next to you every morning for the rest of my life, because I want to raise our child together and build a family that's messy and unconventional and completely ours. He took a breath. Serena Hart, will you marry me? She was crying again, but these tears were different. These were joy and relief and love spilling over because there was too much to contain. Yes, she said, her voice breaking. Yes, of course, yes. Evan slid the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly. Then Serena was pulling him to his feet, kissing him like he was air and she'd been drowning, and Evan felt something settle deep in his chest. This was right. This was home. They forgot about dinner, spent the evening tangled together on the couch, Serena admiring her ring, and Evan making plans for a future that suddenly felt solid and real. They'd get married soon, they decided. Nothing big, just immediate family and close friends. They'd sell Evan's apartment and he'd move into the brownstone officially. They'd prepare the nursery together, attend prenatal classes together, face whatever came next together. I want to tell your mother, Serena said later, her head resting on Evan's chest, about the engagement. Is that okay? She'll be thrilled. And Mia? Evan was quiet for a moment. We can tell her if you want, but Serena, you can't keep hoping she'll come around. It's destroying you. She's my daughter. I can't just give up on her. I'm not asking you to give up. I'm asking you to accept that she's made her choice, and you can't force her to change her mind. We can leave the door open, let her know she's welcome if she ever decides to reach out, but we can't put our lives on hold waiting for her approval. Serena was silent, and Evan knew she was wrestling with the truth of what he'd said. Finally, she nodded against his chest. You're right. I hate it, but you're right. She looked up at him. We tell her about the engagement. One last attempt to reach out, to show her this is real and permanent. And if she still refuses to engage, we move forward without her. They sent the text together, Serena's hands shaking as she typed. I'm engaged to Evan. We're getting married and having a baby, and I would love for you to be part of our lives. But I understand if you can't accept that. The door is always open if you change your mind. I love you, Mom. The response came 2 hours later. Congratulations on ruining your life. Don't contact me again. Serena read the message once, then handed her phone to Evan without a word. He watched her face carefully, looking for the devastation he'd seen after the coffee shop confrontation. Instead, he saw something closer to resignation, acceptance, the painful letting go of hope that was causing more harm than comfort. Okay, she said quietly. Okay, I tried. We both tried. Now we move forward. And they did. They told Evan's mother about the engagement over Sunday dinner in Colorado Springs. Linda cried happy tears and hugged them both, welcoming Serena into the family with the same fierce loyalty she'd shown her sons. She insisted on throwing them a small engagement party. Nothing fancy, just family and a few close friends who wanted to celebrate. The party was held at Linda's house on a Saturday in late February. The turnout was smaller than it might have been. Some people made excuses, uncomfortable with the unconventional nature of Evan and Serena's relationship. But the people who came were genuinely happy for them. Danny Rodriguez showed up with his wife, embarrassing Evan with stories from the construction site. Serena's assistant brought champagne and gushed about the ring. Ryan gave a toast that managed to be both heartfelt and slightly inappropriate, as was his way. To my brother, Ryan said, raising his glass, who proved that sometimes the wrong person leaving makes room for the right person to arrive. And to Serena, who's brave enough to love him anyway. Serena laughed and cried simultaneously, leaning into Evan while everyone cheered. Linda took photos that would eventually fill frames in both their houses. And for one perfect afternoon, surrounded by people who chose to support them, Evan and Serena felt like their happiness was justified and real. March brought warmer weather and Serena's pregnancy becoming visible. She started wearing looser clothes, but there was no hiding the curve of her stomach now. The whispers intensified. Looks in grocery stores, comments from acquaintances who thought they were being subtle. Serena handled it with more grace than Evan could have managed, meeting curiosity with polite distance and cruelty with silence. They got married on a Tuesday morning in late March at the courthouse downtown. Linda was there, and Ryan and Chelsea, Serena's assistant and 2 longtime clients who'd stayed loyal through the scandal. Danny Rodriguez served as Evan's best man, claiming someone needed to make sure he didn't pass out during the vows. Serena wore a simple cream dress that accommodated her growing belly, her hair loose and her smile radiant. Evan wore his best suit and couldn't stop staring at her like she was something miraculous. The ceremony took less than 15 minutes, but when the judge pronounced them married and Evan kissed his wife for the first time, it felt like the most significant moment of his life. They had lunch after at a restaurant in Cherry Creek, just the wedding party, celebrating with good food and better company. Linda gave a speech about how proud she was of her son for having the courage to choose love over convention. Serena's assistant read a poem about new beginnings that made everyone cry, and Evan sat there, his hand clasped with Serena's, their rings catching the light, and felt complete. That evening, back at the brownstone that was now fully theirs, Serena and Evan lay in bed and talked about the future. The baby was due in early July. They'd finished the nursery last weekend, yellow walls and white furniture, and a crib that Evan had assembled with more care than he'd ever given any construction project. They had names picked out, but were keeping them secret until birth, a small rebellion against everyone who'd felt entitled to opinions about their relationship. Are you happy? Serena asked, her head on Evan's shoulder, her hand resting on the swell of her stomach. Happier than I knew I could be. No regrets? Not one. Even with everything we've lost, the friendships, the social standing, Mia? Evan considered the question honestly. Had their relationship cost them? Absolutely. Some of Serena's oldest friends had distanced themselves. Evan had lost touch with people from Mia's social circle who felt caught in the middle. And Mia herself remained stubbornly absent, a wound that Serena carried with quiet grace but that never fully healed. But against those losses, Evan weighed what they'd gained. A partnership built on honesty and mutual respect. A home that felt safe instead of temporary. A child who would be born into a family that chose each other deliberately and completely. "I'd make the same choice every time," he said finally. "You're worth it. This life is worth it." Serena shifted to look at him, and in the dim bedroom light, her eyes shone with unshed tears. "I don't know what I did to deserve you. You showed up. You chose to see me. That's all it took." They made love slowly, carefully, mindful of Serena's pregnancy, but driven by the need to celebrate everything they'd survived and built. And afterward, wrapped in each other in the darkness, Evan felt the baby kick for the first time, a flutter against his palm that was both foreign and familiar. "Did you feel that?" Serena's voice was awed. Yeah, I felt it." Their child, making its presence known, reminding them that all the struggle and sacrifice had been in service of something bigger than either of them alone. April slid into May, and Serena's pregnancy progressed without complications. Dr. Chen remained cautiously optimistic, though she continued to monitor closely given Serena's age and the statistical risks. Every appointment that came back clear felt like a small victory, another milestone reached. Evan got the promotion at Bridgepoint Development, a title change and salary bump that meant more security for their growing family. He was leading multiple projects now, but he made sure to leave work at reasonable hours, to prioritize dinners with Serena and evenings preparing for their child's arrival. They took a childbirth class at the hospital where Serena would deliver, sitting among couples who were mostly younger but who treated them with surprising warmth. The instructor didn't blink at their age difference, just treated them like any other expectant parents. And in that room, practicing breathing techniques and learning about labor stages, Evan felt something he hadn't realized he'd been missing. Acceptance. Normalcy. The simple acknowledgement that they were just two people about to become parents, nothing more complicated than that. June arrived with heat and humidity that made Serena miserable. She was huge now, uncomfortable and tired, and counting down days until her due date. Evan did what he could, foot rubs, late-night ice cream runs, assembling every piece of baby gear that arrived in boxes from relatives and friends. Linda visited frequently, already embracing her role as grandmother with enthusiasm. She brought casseroles for the freezer and advice Serena actually wanted to hear, stories about raising Evan and Ryan that made them all laugh. And watching his mother bond with his wife, Evan felt the family he was building become tangible and real. They were 1 week from Serena's due date when the doorbell rang on a Sunday evening. Evan was in the kitchen cleaning up after dinner while Serena rested on the couch, too pregnant to be comfortable in any position for long. He almost didn't answer, assuming it was a delivery driver or a neighbor, but something made him check the security camera. Mia stood on the porch. Evan's first instinct was to pretend they weren't home, to protect Serena from another confrontation when she was this vulnerable. But then he saw Mia's face, not angry, not hostile, but uncertain, almost afraid. He opened the door but didn't invite her in. "Evan." Mia looked different, thinner, maybe, or just tired in a way that went deeper than physical exhaustion. "Is my mom here?" "She is." Would it be okay if I talked to her?" Every protective instinct screamed at Evan to say no, to send Mia away before she could hurt Serena again. But this wasn't his choice to make. "Wait here," he said, and closed the door. Serena was struggling to sit up when Evan returned to the living room. "Who was that?" "Mia." Serena went completely still. "What does she want?" "To talk to you." "But Serena, you don't have to see her, not if you're not ready. I can send her away." For a long moment, Serena said nothing. Then she held out her hand. "Help me up." Evan pulled her to her feet and steadied her as she made her way to the front door. When she opened it, mother and daughter stared at each other across the threshold, with years of hurt and love warring between them. "Hi, Mom," Mia said quietly. "Hi, baby. Can I come in?" Serena stepped back, and Mia entered the house she'd been inside countless times before, but that must have felt entirely foreign now. Her eyes went immediately to Serena's stomach, to the undeniable evidence of the pregnancy, and something in her face crumpled. "You're huge," she said, and it came out choked. "Due in a week." "A week?" Mia's eyes were wet. I've missed so much. They stood in the foyer in awkward silence until Evan cleared his throat. I'll give you two some privacy, he said, but Serena caught his hand. Stay, please. Whatever Mia has to say, you should hear it too. They moved to the living room, Serena settling back on the couch, while Evan sat beside her, his hand finding hers automatically. Mia took the chair across from them, and the physical distance felt symbolic of the emotional gulf between them. I've been doing therapy, Mia started, her voice small. Since January, my therapist helped me see some things about myself that I didn't want to see. Like what? Serena asked gently. Like how selfish I've been. How I've spent my whole life thinking the world revolved around me and my feelings. How I punished you for choosing happiness because it was inconvenient for me. Mia's tears spilled over. I was so angry, Mom. When you first told me about Evan, I felt betrayed and hurt and like you'd chosen him over me. But the truth is, I ended things with Evan. I walked away. And I've spent months being furious at you for seeing value in something I threw away. Mia, let me finish, please. Mia wiped at her eyes. My therapist made me examine why I was so angry, and I realized it wasn't really about you and Evan. It was about me facing the fact that I treated Evan terribly for 6 years, and he still became an amazing partner, just not to me. That you found love after Dad, and I'm still alone because I can't commit to anything or anyone. That your life moved forward while mine stayed stuck. Serena was crying now too, and Evan felt his own eyes burn. I said horrible things to you, Mia continued. Cruel, unforgivable things. I called Evan a gold digger when he's the most genuine person I've ever known. I accused you of baby trapping him when anyone with eyes can see how much he loves you. I destroyed our relationship because I was too immature to handle my own discomfort. You were hurt, Serena said. I understand why. But I hurt you worse. And I'm so sorry, Mom. I'm sorry for the things I said, for cutting you out of my life, for missing your wedding and your pregnancy and all these months of your happiness. I'm sorry for being the kind of person who made you feel like you had to choose between your daughter and your own life. Silence filled the room, heavy with emotion and years of complicated history. Evan waited for Serena to respond, to offer forgiveness or demand explanations, but she just sat there crying and staring at her daughter. Finally, Mia looked at Evan. I owe you an apology too. You were nothing but good to me, and I took you for granted. I saw you as convenient and safe, someone who would always be there while I figured out what I really wanted. And when you found happiness with my mom, I tried to destroy it because I couldn't handle the guilt of how badly I'd treated you. Mia, Evan started, but she held up a hand. You don't have to forgive me, either of you. I just needed you to know that I see it now. How wrong I was, how much damage I caused, and how happy I am that you found each other, even if my pride took months to let me admit it. Serena stood, moving with the careful deliberation of someone very pregnant, and crossed to her daughter. Mia stood too, and for a heartbeat they just looked at each other. Then Serena pulled Mia into a hug, both of them crying openly, and Evan felt something tight in his chest finally release. I missed you, Serena whispered. Every single day, I missed you. I missed you too, so much. They stood there for a long time, mother and daughter, rebuilding bridges with tears and honesty and the kind of love that survived even the deepest hurt. Eventually, Serena pulled back and guided Mia's hand to her stomach. Your sibling, she said softly. Do you want to feel? Mia's face was a mess of tears and emotion, but she nodded. The baby kicked, right on cue, and Mia's expression transformed into wonder. That's amazing, she breathed. You're going to be a big sister. I know. I'm sorry I wasn't here for this. For any of it. You're here now, that's what matters. Evan watched from the couch, giving them their moment, and felt grateful in ways that defied language. This wasn't a perfect resolution. There would still be awkward moments, complicated conversations, healing that took time. But it was a beginning. A door opening instead of slamming shut. Mia turned to Evan, her expression tentative. Can we talk? Just for a minute? Evan nodded and followed her to the kitchen, leaving Serena on the couch to rest. In the bright light, Mia looked young and uncertain, nothing like the angry woman who'd destroyed her mother 6 months ago. I really am sorry, she said. For everything, the things I said about you, the accusations, all of it. I appreciate that. You love her. I can see that now. The way you look at her, the way you protect her, it's real. It is. And the baby wasn't a trap or manipulation or any of the awful things I said. No, it was an accident, but it's also the best thing that ever happened to us. Mia nodded slowly. You make her happy, happier than I've ever seen her, and you deserve credit for that, not the criticism I've been giving you. Thank you. Is it okay if I try to be part of this? The baby, your family, I know I don't deserve it after everything, but I'd like to try. If you'll let me. Evan studied Mia carefully, looking for signs of manipulation or hidden agenda, but all he saw was genuine remorse and tentative hope. That's between you and your mom, he said finally, but if Serena wants you in our lives, I won't stand in the way. Our kid deserves to know their sister. Thank you. That's more than I have any right to ask for. They returned to the living room where Serena was wiping her eyes and trying to compose herself. Mia sat beside her mother this time, close but not crowding, and they talked for another hour. About the pregnancy, the wedding, the months Mia had missed, about therapy and growth, and the hard work of changing patterns that had been set for years, about hope for a relationship that could be different, better, built on honesty instead of obligation. When Mia finally left, promising to visit again soon, Serena collapsed back against the couch cushions with an exhausted sigh. I can't believe that just happened, she said. Me neither. Do you think she meant it? About changing? About wanting to be part of our lives? Evan pulled Serena close, careful of her belly. I think she's trying. That's all anyone can do. I got my daughter back. After all this time, I got her back. You did. Serena was quiet for a moment, then looked up at Evan with shining eyes. We're going to be okay. All of us. We're going to be a family. We already are a family. And they were. Unconventional, born from heartbreak and scandal, built on choices that defied everyone's expectations. But real. Solid. Worth every obstacle they'd overcome. Their daughter was born on July 3rd, 2 days before her due date, after 14 hours of labor that left Evan feeling useless and Serena exhausted. But when the doctor placed that tiny screaming bundle in Serena's arms and Evan saw his wife and child together for the first time, everything else fell away. She's perfect, Serena whispered, tears streaming down her face. She is. We did it. We made a whole person. Evan kissed Serena's forehead, then reached out to touch his daughter's impossibly small hand. Tiny fingers wrapped around his thumb, gripping tight, and Evan felt his heart expand in ways he hadn't known were possible. Welcome to the world, Elena Rose Cole, he said softly. Linda arrived within the hour, crying happy tears and immediately claiming grandmother privileges. Ryan and Chelsea came bearing flowers and ridiculous stuffed animals. And Mia, who'd been texting Serena throughout the labor, arrived that evening with a gift bag and an uncertain smile. Can I meet her? She asked from the hospital room doorway. Of course, Serena said. Come meet your sister. Mia approached slowly, reverently, and when she saw the baby in Serena's arms, her eyes filled with tears. She's beautiful, Mom. Do you want to hold her? Can I? Serena carefully transferred Elena to Mia's arms, guiding her to support the head, smiling at her daughter's nervous concentration, and watching Mia cradle her sister with such tenderness. Evan felt the last piece of their complicated puzzle slide into place. They weren't a traditional family. Their origin story would never be simple or easy to explain, but they were whole, they were happy, and they were together. 6 months later, on an ordinary Tuesday evening in January, Evan walked into the brownstone after work to find Serena in the kitchen with Elena on her hip, stirring something on the stove while singing off-key to their daughter. The sight stopped him in his tracks like it did most days, this image of domestic happiness he'd built from the ruins of heartbreak. Daddy's home, Serena said, and Elena's face lit up with a gummy smile that made Evan's entire day worthwhile. He crossed the kitchen and kissed his wife, then his daughter, breathing in the smell of dinner cooking and baby shampoo and home. How was your day? Serena asked. Better now. How was yours? Mia stopped by. She brought groceries and stayed for lunch. Elena showed off her new trick of blowing raspberries. I'm sorry I missed it. There will be others. They moved through their evening routine, dinner together, bath time for Elena, the careful choreography of putting a 6-month-old to bed. When Elena was finally asleep in her crib, Evan and Serena collapsed on the couch with glasses of wine, exhausted and content. Can you believe where we were a year ago? Serena asked, curled against Evan's side. Feels like a lifetime. I was so angry at myself for falling for you, convinced it was a mistake that would blow up in my face. And now I can't imagine any other life, this messy, complicated, perfect life. Evan kissed the top of her head, his hand finding hers, their wedding rings catching the light. Outside, Denver was buried under January snow, but inside the brownstone on Washington Park, in a house filled with love and laughter and the soft sounds of a sleeping baby, Evan Cole had everything he'd ever wanted. Not because the path had been easy, not because everyone had understood or approved, but because he'd been brave enough to choose love when it arrived unexpectedly, because Serena had been brave enough to choose him back, because they'd built something real from the wreckage of what came before, and because sometimes losing the wrong person is exactly what makes room for the right one to find you.